Hello and welcome to another one of our videos where today we're going to be sort of busting some of the back pain myths, so debunking some of these things. So there's a good little quote you can always remember, which which really sort of sums up the problems of injury, especially back pain. So firstly, if there's one thing that frustrates me more, it's seeing people remain in pain from following a plan that's based on really poor information. So this is part one of about 4 videos that we're going to look at each myth on its own. If you look in the description under this, there's a link to a website article that has all of the myths in the one article. So check out the link in the description under the video to see more. But just understand that most treatments and strategies used for back pain, some of them are good for some people but not for others, and that's why there's a lot of hit and miss. All right, so we're gonna sort of really go through into detail of each one. So the first one we're looking at is the belief that stretching is the best way to relieve back pain, and I could throw in the mix here, acupuncture and massage as well, because it's sort of attacking the same sort of problem, which they all can be useful, but on their own, without anything else, that's not really a good strategy, and I'm going to explain why. So stretching is a good thing to use in the beginning. It's actually very low intensity, less risk to some degree, and it does make people feel better. But if there's not an intelligent way of choosing the exercises and knowing why you're using them, you can set yourself up for more problems. So I've put here, like, it's great to introduce in the beginning, but not always, because some people might be too mobile, some people might be using stretches that are just making them worse. So you just really need to understand what you're using and where you're using them. Right. So one of the worst stretches overseas is sort of tucking your knees to your chest. Some people will feel like a short-term relief from it, and they feel like they're trying to stretch where the area of pain is, so being their back and pulling and sort of flatten things out. This is actually sort of making it worse in the long term. So while that sort of makes sense to relieve what's tight, it's making your spine more unstable and then more vulnerable to more pain. So most people, the reason that you develop the stiffness in the first place was due to a loss of stability, or what we call good stiffness. And then usually the hips, thoracic regions, and various other muscles start to create stiffness, which then makes the lumbar spine more unstable, and that's where trigger points, spasms and all that sort of stuff kick in. So the key is you can use stretches if you need to, but make sure your back remains in neutral, or your spine, especially the lumbar spine. This is the safest place to have your spine in almost anything, or everything we do. So think about how many exercises where you need to keep the spine in neutral. So deadlift, very important, push-ups, running, chin-ups, squats, lunges, just about everything you can think of, this lumbar spine area would just remain in neutral and never move. So it's telling you it needs to actually have some really good stiffness and stabilizing strategies to protect it from damage. When it's getting flexed and bent and overextended is when you start to get into trouble. So 2 sports that are really known for creating a lot of back pain are the 2 where you do see a lot of flexing of the spine. And so rowing is a classic one, cycling, and they also get a lot of neck trouble from trying to tilt their head up, so they're overextending their neck so they can look straight ahead. In both cases we see a lot of problems with disc bulges in the lumbar spine from this flexed position, because it's out of neutral. And you can see the stretch that people use where they're pulling the knee to the chest is actually doing this to them. So you can sort of begin to see where the problems in using some stretches for a short-term relief for a long-term problem. So if we come back to the key to remain in neutral, so any excessive movement here creates the loss of stability. So you see here's a yoga pose here where we're going into full flexion, stretching through the hamstrings and very much lower back as well. In that same position we would see a disc bulge happen in a deadlift, or a disc bulge happen with someone just picking up a box or tying the shoes, picking a pencil up. To always understand the spine doesn't want to be bent, it wants to be held still. Alright, it doesn't want to come out of neutral. It's not a good position for it to be into. It's okay to be able to do it when you need to, but you don't want to use repetitive exercises. You definitely don't want to use load. And if you already have back pain, this is the thing, if you already have back pain, these things are not a good strategy. If you don't have back pain, you might be okay with this and be fine. But if you already have it, you really got to stop. You've got to find a way to stop moving that spine around. So it was sort of already mentioned here, it has a lot to do with the disc. So constantly loosening the spine with the stretches or movements in general is going to massively aggravate them. You continue doing it repeatedly, you're going to end up rupturing them, and then there's all the different variations of disc pain, where it starts to progressively get a lot worse. And then we see all this sort of stuff here, and anyone who's had a bulging disc will tell you it's horrible. It's it really can ruin your entire life, and it's hard to get rid of once it's there. So this is where a lot of people in their early days using these stretches thinking they're helping them, and it's not helping them at all. All right, so always remember the stiffness in the back could be poor stability in the first place. So if you're constantly weakening your stabilizer, all you're doing is making it worse, not better. Short-term relief, long-term pain. So the reason that they get a short-term relief is basically it reduces this pain sensitivity in the nerves. So that's why you feel sort of good straight after it, but then later in the day or the next day or even at night, the pain sort of comes back really bad, and the stretch doesn't seem to do much anymore. And it's because you're actually rupturing the discs, and it's moving around so much it can't hold itself still. And once it starts touching nerves, you're in trouble. So as we said at the beginning, stretching, this is not all stretches, this is just very much in particular the lower back stretches. So it doesn't mean all stretching is bad, it's just the ones that move you out of neutral. So stretching of the hips here, where we're keeping the spine in neutral. This is a thoracic extension where we're trying to again encourage good stiffness at the lumbar region. Great stretches to use. Pretty much all stretches to use where you're keeping your spine in neutral are awesome for back pain if the stretch is required. They're also easily stiffed up and horrible postural imbalances. So this is where we see all this horrible kyphosis and things like that. There'll be some stretches around the upper body here that'll be essential, as through the glutes and the hips, but we've got to make sure we do it in neutral to avoid the potential danger. So you've got to remember though that the stiffness might also be caused from sitting for long periods, poor exercise choices as sit-ups. These areas will benefit greatly from the mobility work from the constant barrage that they're encountering. Now, I mentioned at the beginning, you've got to be careful if you're a hypermobile person. So these are a sort of a select few people that really have abnormal flexibility. So they usually try to overstretch themselves even when they're already better than everyone else. Usually these people are just lacking so much stability. Any further aggravation of it all just tends to exacerbate their problems. Again, strengthening and stabilising strategies are a much better choice, actually sort of avoiding stretching altogether. Acupuncture and that is also bad for this type of person, so you really want to try and just learn how to move better, better strength and stability of the joints. And this is where I've also put here, we see a lot of class environments. Yoga is not a great thing if you've got back pain, because if you're doing it individually and you're choosing the right poses, yeah, for sure. But that I'd just probably say to just choose some good stretches that you maybe need to do. In a class situation, there's so many different variations. You can see this person here can't get a good position, but some of the others maybe can get a good position. Look how many positions are going into lumbar flexion, like I showed you with that cycling and rowing. If you've got back pain, this is not a good strategy for exercise to get rid of your back pain, and you've really got to make things a lot worse. All right, so like I said, you're better off maybe designing your own specific routine of poses or stretch in combination of stretches where you can stay in neutral. The warrior pose, for example, might be a good choice for you. So stability and strength, always remember there's no one thing that will solve your problem, only multiple methods. So stretches, even if you've got the right ones, like you're keeping in neutral, you use hips and thoracic, if that's as far as you go, you're not going to get a good long-term result, because for every weak muscle there's also a tight one. So I've sort of put on here, ask yourself these questions, like why did you get the pain in the first place? Did pain create my movement dysfunction, or did the movement dysfunction create my pain? It's a bit of the chicken and the egg. if there's a tight muscle, then there must be an opposing weak muscle because there's something being inhibited. Your answer is to not just address the tight one, but also address the weak one, and then address how they work together and interact when you move, because that's what a person with no pain will do. So find the answer to those questions, and you're well on the way to finding your long-term solution. So what can you do about all this? My advice is devise your own specific stretching routine based on tests and assessments. These define what's short and tight and what actually needs it. If it doesn't need it, don't do it. If it has a normal range of motion, your problem is going to be more to do with stability and strength and how you're moving, not necessarily a tight or stiffness. So massage and that not really going to be of use to you, probably make you worse. Here's an example of a stretch test that we use in our online program for back pain, and there's several others that we might use for specific people we see. So there's some, as you can see, these are all like postural and mobility things at the start, and there's a couple of isolated strength tests here, and then one that's like a movement stability test. All of this stuff gives me great information telling me where to start with this person, and there's no two people the same. I've got to find what's right for you. Alright, so in summary, take-home message is stretching is okay if it targets the areas of stiffness, which are usually going to be hips, thoracic, maybe even ankles, like calves in the neck. You must not stretch the lower back itself. Leave the lower back alone. Leave it to stiffen up and strengthen and stabilize and really grizzle itself. It wants to stay in neutral. Avoid flexing or overextending your spine. Make sure you're improving your stability, because this really could be the solution that the stiff muscles originated in the first place. Lastly, always look at how you move, because this is really the secret behind getting all the muscles to interact and work together and removing imbalances and dysfunction. Change this and you won't really need to work on specific things, and like I said, then you'll be fine and never have the problem again. So check the links in the description on the video here, because there's good articles that you can find. There's free reports here that you can download with heaps of exercises and instructions on how to do stretching routines and stuff like that. For a very specific program with all the assessments and everything, you can get our back pain program, which is a 90-minute video with an instruction manual on how to do everything. So check all that out. Hope you've enjoyed that video. I hope it sort of sheds a bit more light on the use of stretching with back pain, and how you can use it to get rid of it if you're suffering with it right now. Alright, so I hope you enjoyed that, and we'll see you on our next video.